Welcome to yet another session of In Dialogue Foundation Certificate Course in Dialogue Studies 2023-2024. Today we have the pleasure of having Dr. Danish Iqbal with us. He will speak on the topic Trust as a Collective Expression. Dr. M Danish Iqbal is an assistant professor at the Department of English, Aligarh Muslim University at Aligarh. His areas of interest include literary theory, intersections between literature and history, secularism, etc. Dr. Iqbal, you have up to 2 hours for the session. You may leave as much time for questions and discussions as you like. And as usual, I remind all the participants to keep their cameras on during the session. Sir, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Pragya, and a very warm welcome to all the participants here. I once again thank the In Dialogue Collective for this occasion, and this is my probably the fourth such attendance here, and each of those iterations has been quite a memorable experience, I must say. Very much in line with the theme of this collective, I have tried to put together a set of ideas which I feel animate the extended discussion on dialogue and what different ways it it can blossom into a very holistic disciplinary pursuit. So in my past interactions with this group, I have tried to touch upon the significance of some of the ideas such as tolerance, reading, and the latest one being emotion. The last time that I talked about was the life of emotion in public. This time around, I have thought of something slightly different than the ones that I have spoken on earlier, and also the way that I'm going to conduct this session. I will lay out the topic of the discussion to begin with, and considering that this forum witnesses participation from scholars with different persuasions and interests, I would I would say urgently urge each of you to share your own thoughts on what I'm going to say. So the later half of this interaction is going to be more of an exchange where I'm going to think aloud with you right now to begin with, and then invite your responses, reflections, etc. So what I'm going to say is by way of a preliminary set of thought, by way of just about trying to tease out the connections which I see pertinent in relation to dialogue and trust. Now, this is something that all of us know. All of us work with what we name trust. And I'm calling trust as a form of collective expression because trust always involves the other. Trust is always projected upon the other, and it involves the self that is projecting it upon the other. Trust, there have been a whole lot of writings and reflections, particularly from among the philosophers, where they look at trust as both a public good and a virtue in its own, very much similar to something like honesty. Sorry. But trust is slightly different from other, conceptually speaking, other cognate terms such as reliability or commit or dependence or honesty, in the sense that not all kinds of trust has have a moral ring to it. So there's a very strong element to trust, as I'm speaking about, in the sense that a strong element of a moral judgment involved in the way that I am going to talk about it. So I was generally looking at the kind of literature available on this topic, and there are approaches to these questions from different sites such as philosophy, psychology, anthropology, sociology, etc., even economics. And why I have chosen to bring to the table is with a very, I would say, palpable presence of a crisis in our public culture that is to do with trust. Now, trust can manifest in many ways. For example, right now I'm meeting you over the internet, and I'm trusting that the connection doesn't drop. You know, if it does drop, then I may feel frustrated, but I can't morally blame the internet connection. So I'm relying on this connection in order to meet you, but I'm not trusting it in the sense that I trust you as a listener right now, that I trust you as a colleague right now, or as someone who shares similar interests, etc. So that is one distinction that I would like to make at the very outset. So when we separate this element of a very mechanical reliance on something, for example, a piece of furniture that we are using, which I think will hold the weight of my computer, the device I'm using, is very different from the trust that I place in my colleagues in the department, or my friends, or my family members, etc. And also the trust which I would like with which people would look at me. That, you know, since all of us have removed time from our daily schedule to gather, we trust that what is going to come is of value to us. So there is already an implicit trust in place which has brought us together. So the reason I'm trying to delineate trust in such a manner is to bring out this distinction from its characterization as some sort of a reliance, or as some sort of strictly as some sort of a reward, because even thieves trust each other, you know. So the moral element of trust can appear in the most unlikely of places. So trust as something which is woven through our daily life, which is woven through our daily experiences. It involves, in this sense of the term, a certain degree of agency. And the degree of agency is expressed in terms of commitment. The commitment that we expect and the commitment that we place in what we are doing. Now, that commitment further involves two separate elements that we may call competence and intention. We always like to trust people for the skill that they have, and also the sincerity with which those skills are going to be put to use. Right. Now, this combination of intention and sincerity is what uh, they come together in a way which makes someone trustworthy and enables trust to operate in our daily life. Now that is trust. All right. Now let's move on to a related term, that is trustworthy. Now, who is trustworthy and who is not? Now, trustworthiness in itself is, of course, a very significant and an important virtue. And it once again has to do with sincerity and knowledge. But what about the contrarian term, which is distrust? Now, distrust needs to be unpacked as well, because distrust cannot be equated with lack of trust. These two are different, is what I've also learned, from having gone through some of these readings, that distrust is something which nobody wants to experience, nor do you want to be labeled as someone who is capable of distrust. On the other hand, a clear admission of lack of trust. For example, if I forthrightly tell you that do not trust me on this, with regards to something, this does not amount to distrust. Distrust only happens or only manifests when there is lack of sincerity despite the presence of certain knowledge and skill or intention. To forthrightly proclaim that I am not the trustworthy person in this case does not amount to being called, or does not amount to distrust. So that is another distinction we have to work with before we go further. And distrust, very much like trust, is a moral articulation, which lack of trust is not. Now, what is the relevance of trust to our collective life? Now, in the beginning, if you can recall, I mentioned that trust has an element of agency, human agency. So when two people trust each other and they expect that their trust will be upheld, will be sustained, or their trust will be, will kind of put itself into motion as and when it is required. It is a very clear expression of a certain agency that we come to place upon that relationship. And this can extend from interpersonal one-to-one relationships to the most abstract formations such as institutions, organizations, nations, our public life, etc. And I think most of you will agree that a lot of chaos that we are surrounded with has to do with this very, I would say, a very sharp, stress that this element of trust has taken. Uh, Now, there could be several reasons for that. But if in this moment, as a bunch of people who are trying to understand the ways in which we can meaningfully understand dialogue, how well can we address this crisis that is to do with trust? Trust in others, trust in your immediate family members, friends, right up to the very hallowed and very preserved provinces such as of scholarship, of skilled expertise, of knowledge, etc. So that is a crisis that is paramount in my sense, which kind of prevails over all other crises that we are surrounded with. Now, I'm going to mention a few um, expressions, common expressions, which in our public life, which have to do with the question of trust. For example, in this moment, uh, you may have noticed that there is a great upsurge of self-articulation in various forms. Now think of the plethora of these social media websites, the social media platforms, and the mediums which have mushroomed all around us that allow yourself to express as you please. Now, that has resulted in all kinds of expressions, right? We are free to express ourselves. We are free as in we believe that we are free to do that, and we do that. And you may have seen that this great celebration of articulation of what you think, what you feel, what you perceive, your fears, your joy, your sadness, everything, your inhibitions. Uh, it has also resulted in, to my mind, and in an almost unprecedented sense, uh, uh, a certain kind of unquestionable primacy to the first person perspective. So, since I'm saying it has to be true, and hence you must trust me, right? So, that is the refrain which I would say shapes this wider cultural phenomenon, where which can be a clip that does not extend beyond a few seconds, right down to these memoirs and autobiographies that that are coming out at quite a frequency. Yes, so I was inviting you to think about this great celebration of the self, which has completely, there's a deluge in all forms of the self-expression. Now, keep that in mind, and then if you may have witnessed that what happens when there are these surfeit of first-person accounts in all its forms, performances, articulations, autobiographies, memoirs, notes. I mean, think about those WhatsApp statuses and those short reels and videos and Facebook posts, where we are always trying to express what we have witnessed, what we have experienced, what we are thinking, what we are feeling, right? Now, on the other hand, now this may sound like this is only an internet-enabled culture. To some degree, it is true. On the other hand, I would also like to invite you to think about something very mundane. and yet something which is inevitable. All of us are finite beings, right? If I am a teacher at a university, the best and the most honest claim that I can make for myself is that, I take interest in certain things. I try to read and think about certain things, and I try to share that with others who have similar interests. And in a classroom, I try to inspire others to think along those lines, etc. Right? Uh, but beyond that, everything that finds a place in my life uh, goes on precisely based on this trust. So if the shopkeeper says that आप ये वाली सब्जी मत लीजिए, आप वो ले लीजिए, so I go with that, right? If I have to make a choice of a certain, anything that I'm buying or anything, any advice that I'm seeking, for example, I go to a doctor, I have to trust the doctor because I have no independent means in any imaginable way that I can trace what the doctor is saying back to an evidence-backed study. It's not possible. And that's why we as human beings, that is our first impulse, to trust each other, right? And now, if trust functions at such a fundamental and a mundane level, then what must have happened for us to also feel free to call for its accountability? Now, here lies a paradox which I want to highlight. That when you go on to, and I may sound, I must say this with great degree of caution, that I'm not promoting a trust in unverifiable information. That's not what I'm trying to push for here. What I'm trying to push for here is that there is an inherent problem, and the problem is that sometimes a persistent push for accountability also corrodes trust, also makes us question that the medical advice that I'm seeking from the doctor, if that is persistently put to question, may also result in a decline in the trust that I place in them. You're getting my point, I hope. And this, when it becomes a very widely shared phenomenon, cultural phenomenon, that's what results in when everything is up for an accountability check. Now, if you browse internet and if you come across a claim that someone has made, for example, with regards to something that they have seen or something that they have read about and they have reported or shared, you as scholars might be doing it, and there could be someone who says, what's the source? Right? Now, that is a right question to ask. But I've also noticed that there could be a few sarcastic remarks which are an expression of disagreement, but that disagreement is expressed not by denying what you're saying, but by simply saying, the source is trust me, bro. Have you come across this phrase, trust me, bro? Now, think about this. What is this? What is this phrase? What is it trying to express? I mean, of course, it might make us smirk. It might make us, kind of ridicule the person saying. But come to think of it, in an attempt to disagree with what is being offered, the remark, the opinion could be very questionable. Let's not get into the quality of the remark. But since we are examining this thing called trust that sustains our collective experience, why is it that this sort of disagreement is expressed not on any other terms, but by demeaning the source of information? That is, on the one hand, there is a great celebration of first person experience, and at the same time, there is also this great ridicule that which gets expressed in these words that trust me, bro. So does that mean that a first person account is both believable as well as it has to be taken with a pinch of salt? It has to be, not only pinch of salt, like a bag of salt. Conventionally speaking, any first person account is, of course, a motivated account. So it seems as if we are caught in a bind where we do value the primary impulse to trust someone, but the great cynicism has also led us to a point where we cannot come to accept that, right? And this is happening. This is happening also at a moment when the all kinds of professional knowledge systems have been put to great questioning in so many different ways. So, for example, you may be witnessing in your daily experience that the kind of questions with regards to history, that they witness a very charged and flared up engagement where everything is dubious, and there is a great degree of, one can say, decline in trust that we used to place in professional history writing, in professional science, in professional, all kinds of professional knowledge systems, I would say. So people have gone on to label it as post-truth times, as a time of of such a shift where these where populist upsurge kind of discounts are conventional norms of knowing and truth establishment. Now I'm drawing you to, to my mind, that still fails to capture the true depth of this crisis. And the true depth of this crisis is, in fact, an assault on this primary impulse to trust each other. Now, let me go back to a few comments that I made while trying to unpack trust as we understand. Now, there is something called, as I said, competence and skill. And all of us are studying to be competent, to be professionally competent in whatever we are studying, right? or whatever we are training for. Now, in that sense, that competence itself, should speak for itself. That competence should sustain our own truth. And the other unverifiable, competence, the skill, the training, the knowledge that you acquire, that can still be independently verified. But the other counter element, that is of intention, that is of sincerity, that remains with us as individuals. This is what we bring to what we're doing. Now, if I am a very competent, skilled teacher, but I have no sincerity and intention to teach, that is going to, of course, harm the trust which acts as a scaffolding between the teacher or relation. Right? So, as in speak in a dialogic manner, where trust involves these two parties, where both of them actively engage in this relationship of trust, then in that sense it requires both competence and intention. And one without the other is always going to result in failure. And at worst, it will invite the moral criticism that we call distrust. So let me now take you back to some of the contemporary examples from our shared cultural practices, which will make it further clear as to what I'm trying to say. Let's think about the way in which you reach out to someone in order to get into a meaningful dialogue. Right? Now, we take that exercise as something which will enable us to arrive at a point which is more evolved, which is more informed, and it is also at the same time based on a certain mutual trust, right? Now, in a primary sense, or in the last instance, we believe what a person says. So I believe what the doctor is saying, right? I believe what the doctor is saying for the reason that the doctor is advising me based on what he or she has been trained in. And in believing what they're saying, the very material act of articulation, in believing that, I'm actually believing everything that precedes that moment of saying, right? So, this trust in what one says, or let me put it differently. Hence, one could say that trust operates only in the form in which someone is saying something. That's how I understand it. All right. So if I'm placing my trust if I'm trusting my friend or my colleague, it is precisely based on their articulation that yes, you can trust me, or that you do not trust me. I'm not good for this, so do not trust me. So what I'm trying to tell you is that it is this very core activity of communication, the act of saying, the act of telling, the act of narrating, the act of sharing, which becomes the site of all the other preceding exercises. And what are those preceding exercises? Preceding exercises, what I'm calling preceding exercises, is everything that has made that articulation sincere and possible. So, if you were to say something to me in this moment, even as we are talking, I'm also believing in everything that has enabled you to say that honestly, right? That I would believe that yes, you must have thought deliberately, you must have verified what you're saying, and that's why I'm believing what you're saying, and that's how trust will operate between the two of us. Now, what has happened, uh, one could say, uh, over the past couple of decades is, in a very viable sense, I'm saying this, what has happened is that this form has remained intact, but all the preceding exercises have taken a severe beating. Now, what? So, in such a situation, is there a possibility of a dialogue without, in fact, establishing the very primary moment of trust, of establishing that trust that what I am saying is trustworthy, and I as a person am trustworthy, and this goes back to another paradox that a lot of cultural critics and commentators have observed, that with the, 100 years ago, knowledge and information was sorry, knowledge and information was not available to everyone, and there was a great degree of gatekeeping, with which it was kept confined to a select group. And I'm saying that as a matter of global history, but with democratization, with the opening up, with the deepening of democracy, with the pervasive technology, with globalization, with flow of ideas, exchanges, and all kinds of technological advancement, there has been a very observable proliferation of avenues through which information is available and knowledge flows, right? Now, has that resulted in a greater degree of competence? Has that resulted in a greater degree of trustworthiness? In fact, it has resulted in the obverse. With the great mushrooming of all kinds of channels and outlets and circuits of information, it has only resulted in a great lack of trust. And this great lack of trust is, as I said, also coterminous with, with the emergence of the first person experience. So how are we to make sense of that? That there is a great surfeit of you know uh, of forms in which we are representing voices, and at the same time, it is also accompanied by or with a risk of not taken to be true, right? So that hurts. That has hurt the credibility of first person experience, as well as uh, the the sanctity which we attach to the first person experience, right? Now, think of many such experiences which can only be narrated by those who have experienced that, and their entire worldview is based on those experiences. Very valid experiences, very valid, I would say, experience becoming a very valid source of knowledge for them about this world, in this world, and about others in this world. Now, being is happening when there is a crisis of credibility, then it raises questions. It raises questions as to uh, what is the sanctity of these testimonies, or how well can we, protect the sanctity of these testimonies. And I'm sure you must have come across instances where uh, a lot of these testimonies and experiences, first-person accounts, they turn out to be not true, right? Now, what is our first reaction to that? Our first reaction to that is, can we really trust anyone? Can they be trusted, right? It's less to do with the verifiability of the information to trust others. Now, I understand that my meeting with you is happening after several similar meetings with other people. Now, based on what you may have gathered over these lectures, and based on your own vocation as of now, whether as students, scholars, or professionals, would you like to share something, some reflection that um, I mean, based on what you do, what you study, what you're training for, in relation to what I'm saying? That do you think that do you feel the crisis that I'm trying to unpack here? That and in what different ways has this crisis uh, affected what you do, both professionally and as a group or as an organization? And after which, I will go on to talk about how this crisis in trust manifests as uh, as a crisis in the collective status of trust, or trust as an element of public life for all of us. So, for the next few minutes, I will hand it over to you, and I'll take down what you're saying, and based on that, I'll proceed further.
Okay, who wants to go first? Is there anyone who wants to take the lead on this? Tulika, do you want to go?
Good evening, everyone. I'm still thinking about what I have to say. Can I go next or something? Something
Yeah,
like
you
that.
can just tell what you do. Introduce yourself.
Okay, so I'm a research scholar. I am pursuing my PhD from Lucknow University, and my subject is philosophy. My topic for my research is philosophical counseling. It is in the retrospective view of Hellenistic and Indian references. So, okay, about this entire session, like this class, I am the term trust is I really need to contemplate. I'll come up with something by the end of what everyone says.
Sonal, you can go next.
Good evening. I'm Sonal. I'm from Nagpur, basically, and I am working in this interfaith dialogue and all on ground. I'm associated with an organization called India Peace Center here, and which is an interfaith organization. And yes, we deal with many youths, and of course, and obviously the elders as well, the think tankers of the city and across the country being associated with the organization. And there comes many experiences where we get the trust issues, obviously. Whom to allow in the organization, who can be associated, what are their intentions, etc. Because being that centrally located place and associated with many elite group in the city, many people come there just to to grow their network for the networking purpose, etc. And our organization's vision is a totally different thing. We want peace building. We want to work with the society. We want to work with people. We want to bring change in people's livelihood. So yes, that time we face these issues, and very strategically we have to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonal. Zikra, would you like to go next?
Am I audible?
Yes.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, sir, for the enlightening session. The term trust, in my opinion, what I heard from you, sir, it's like the term is changing as the world is growing, and we are going towards technology and internet. The term is changing. If you will see, yeah, if you will go back to history, our elders, our old age people, they are very they are very adamant that this is our tongue. If we say yes, it means yes. If anyone will come, we will say no. I mean, they are adamant on their words. But nowadays, the term trust is changing. If we are getting more profit, we are breaking the trust, and we are going for that. So in my opinion, nowadays the term is changing. I don't know why, what is the reason, but I think so. In my opinion, we are changing. We are not as our elders, our older people are adamant on our words. We are not like that. Even in my generation, we are not like adamant. We are, if we are getting profit, or we are getting any profit from others, we are going towards them. We are not saying, we said we make promises with others. If the promise will break, it will hurt them. So in my opinion, we are changing, and we should think about that. We have to be honest on our words. Thank you.
Thank you, Zikra. Poonam, would you like to go next?
Yes, yes. Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so I am Poonam. I am doing PhD in economics, and I am mostly interested in fieldwork, like going in primary, in villages, collecting data on socioeconomic topics, and also about education, about what people are doing in agriculture. So, what you said in the lecture, I related with in two ways. Like first is like when we go to for survey, like trusting us for people is very important thing, because unless until they don't trust us, they will not be able to share like true information, like they will say. So there are like experiences when people trust us and they share, like sometimes I find that they opened up so much that they become so vulnerable, they cry, and I feel that, like, I don't know, like it seems like they want to be heard and they want to trust, but also to trust that they need some conviction, as you rightly said, that they need that sincerity, that if, like, for example, I will give a small example. I am going there like in the evening and they are saying that they are doing some work, they are busy, I should come in the morning at 9 o'clock. So that I am sincere for my work, I have to be there at 9 o'clock. Yeah, so yeah, I relate it in that sense, that first I have to convince them that I am sincere person. Second thing is, there is something inherent in human being as a people, like people want to trust and want to be heard, like share their information. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Poonam. Munir, if you can uh, switch on your camera and speak. Okay, Asna, would you like to go next?
So good evening all. Myself Asna. I'm a final year undergraduate student at Jamia Millia Islamia. So regarding trust, my definition of trust had evolved over time, because earlier I used to be a person who used to share everything with every person, be it strangers, be it people I knew. That was because till my 12th grade, I wasn't much open to a larger society. So it is after my 12th grade that I got to meet new people. So that initial excitement phase of mine, entrusted with people with all my stories. So later, the experiences, the individual personal experiences from people made me learn that you shouldn't, no, it is my thing. So I learned that you shouldn't share all your things with everyone, and everyone not deserves to listen all your personal stories or your happiness or sadness. So now it takes a longer period of time for me to trust one person with all the experiences. Same from my side as well. For me, trust is a long evolving process that we have to gain through our actions, not just words. So that is my definition of trust. Thank you.
Thank you, Asna. Naim, if you can unmute and if you can switch on your camera. Okay, you're stable, not stable. Would you like, if you have anything, you can just maybe write down in the chat. I think that also works. So, Kenna, would you like to go next? You're not audible. Yes, now you can.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you, sir, for this. Whatever you explained till now, like Tulika mentioned, I think I also need to contemplate on what I thought trust to be and how I sometimes even use trust reliability as synonyms, which I think so I will not do henceforth. One thing that I would like to say is, like sir, you explained how with the digital age there is a sense of there is the sense that we do not trust others anymore, or we trust people much lesser than what we would do. I think this happens also because the internet brings a sense of anonymity, and until and unless you know the other person, you will not trust that person. So that is it, according to me.
Thank you. So, Kenna, Tulika, would you like to, if you've had time, or if you need more time, that's also okay.
Ma'am, I don't really think I have anything to say on trust.
Sure. Munir, if you can hear us. Okay, I think. Okay, you're here. You can speak.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. So I don't have I much to say. Yeah, but the thing with trust is I'm not able to understand the why and what of it. Why do we need trust? Is it our basic virtue as human beings, or is it just something, a utopian thing made up to build relations or to cut off relations? I'm not able to follow anything in this till now. Sorry for that.
I think we've covered everyone, Dr. Iqbal, so you can.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for your thoughtful remarks. Let me begin with the last remark, the why and how of it. That is it merely a utopian aspiration, or why are we after trust? Now, if you could recall, at one point I said that trust is important, and it is, of course, a virtue that all of us aspire to, simply for the reason that our lives are made up of a multitude of, it has a multitude. So, I mean, a lot of things come together in so many different combinations and ways, which are also necessary. And at the same time, we are humanly incapable to account for all of them, So, of course, it comes down to trust, that we take what we are offered to be true. As simple as that. I mean, think about the many different relationships that surround you over a day. Now, the expertise which sustain and enable each of those relationships, each of those facts of your life, they cannot be verified by us, because they extend beyond us in a far greater way than we can ever match to, And it is precisely in order to kind of afford them the rightful place in our lives that trust appears as the sustaining phenomenon in our lives, So, for example, as a teacher, when I interact with my students, the students listen to me precisely because somewhere they believe that what I am bringing to them in the class is coming from a place of expertise and with a certain degree of seriousness and sincerity, which also, of course, involves my own intention. Now, this simple exercise is the element of all other encounters that the student must be facing at different points in, all the different relationships that animate his or her day, right? Now, why should we trust anyone? Of course, why should we? Precisely because it is only through trust that trustworthiness comes into being. Now, some of the scholars have also identified that how do we trust? I mean, they are investigating the question that how do we come to trust someone, which is different from believing, which is different from, let us say, believing in God. If you are an atheist, you can't switch to believing in God immediately. It always undergoes a certain set of experiences, certain set of value judgments, after which you come to, profess faith or otherwise. Similarly, the reason that the relationship between trust and trustworthiness is also not of one of direct correspondence. Sometimes we we go on to trust someone and something, or an abstract idea, organization, as I said, and any such formation. Once we find that they have trustworthiness, right? So if your colleague has helped you in a way that you initially didn't think they will, you come to trust them. On other occasions, they help you precisely because you trust them. So the trustworthiness also breeds or manifests trust where it is missing. Now let me justify why I'm trying to center staging trust in an exercise that is built around dialogue or dialogic exercises. As I mentioned, that in any dialogic encounter, we place great importance on the first person account, that is the experience of the person. And we make dialogue possible only by privileging that first person, where both the entities are, involved in a dialogic activity. But what has happened in contemporary culture, if you would have noticed, is that there is a crisis of legitimacy. There's a crisis of authority. And that crisis of legitimacy and authority in relation to the experience, the first person account, the first person, the very immediate source of experience, that in itself has come under severe doubt, a severe kind of questionable entity, right? It's become a questionable entity. So is there any other way of salvaging this relationship, this sanctity that we accord to first person, except for trust, where trust becomes a self-evident virtue in itself, precisely for the reason that even in those instances where you verify, where you are relatively in a position to verify and come back to trust what is being said, you at the end of the day are only going to trust what is being said, independent of verification. You understand? Now, take a mundane example of a review that you find on Amazon. If you buy something over Amazon, you may have scrolled through the reviews, right? You read the review with full knowledge that it could just as well be made up. Some of them could be, but who knows, right? Yet, this very drive, this very urge to read the reviews, it emerges precisely from a place that we primarily tend to trust that someone has participated in this collaborative exercise for the greater common good, that if there's a need for something similar in someone else's life, they can trust what this review is saying. So all I'm trying to say is that independent of the verifiability, independent of our means to hold something to account, this urge to trust in what is being said, that possibly is the only hope out of this crisis of legitimacy and authority, which is at the heart of any dialogic exercise. You know what I'm saying? Let me also include my own experience as a teacher. Now, I teach this paper to my undergrad students, which introduces them to the concepts of literature, right? Now, as part of that paper, one of the topics that I teach is the difference in the experience of reading stories that have been written with different or differing points of view. All right. Now, imagine a story that has been written in third person narration, where somebody else is telling, when someone is telling the story about somebody else, where the narrator is not a character in the story, as against a story where the narrator is the character in this, one of the characters, or maybe the protagonist in a story. Now, the experience of reading these two kinds of fiction will always be different. For the reason that a story where the narrator is not a character will always ring more believable, because it has been written with, because the story has been told with no apparent motivation, where the characters do not have motivations of their own to tell the story. Unlike a first person narration, where the character has all kinds of motivation to share their story, right? Now, as a reader, when you read these two stories, your experience of these characters are going to be totally different. And you can relate to your own experience of watching a film or reading a story of this sort, where the character is himself or herself telling their own story. Now, do we trust this first person account precisely, or I'm calling it testimony for convenience? Do we trust this testimony in the very same way that a third person account has to share with us? For example, if a doctor is telling me or narrating a story of a patient, and a patient is sharing their own story. Now, the doctor will have an excess of knowledge about what ails this patient, and hence will help us identify, quote unquote, the rational complaints and the irrational complaints, the justifiable complaints and the irrelevant complaints, etc. But the patient, all of that combines into one whole, of which we call an experience of illness, right? Now, what I'm saying, what I'm trying to convey to you through these examples is that if I'm reading the testimony of the patient and I'm not willing to take it for the kind of experience that they're sharing, and I'm more interested in, or I'm only after the verifiable element, that which part of it is relevant or irrelevant or rational or unscientific, etc., then I'm also somewhere, undercutting the trust element of this encounter, right? And in this wider shared cultural space in the contemporary times, where everyone is saying things, there is this great anxiety to both establish the accountability and also honor the first person account. And this has resulted in a very palpable crisis tension, where I'm willing to believe you, but I'm also pulled back by this anxiety of the authenticity, anxiety to do with the authenticity of what you're saying, right? And there are several reasons for this, that what is enabling it. Unlike, now everything is available in a far more convenient and accessible manner than it was earlier, which in terms of verifying something. And this crisis has affected not only our daily experiences, but also established norms, professional norms of knowledge creation, of practices of knowledge. For example, I gave you the example of history, and you can of course go back in time and remind yourself of what we witnessed a couple of years ago during this epidemic, where all kinds of scientific knowledge came under severe stress, and all of that was on account of why should we believe that these are the practices, norms to be adhered to, and not my own experience, which is that I'm moving around without a mask and I'm fine. Now, what is this doing? This celebration of a personal experience over established, verifiable, evidence-backed, norms-based knowledge. This has caused a great disbalance, and I want to remind all of us here that they both are important. They both are important. And it is this unhealthy celebration, I would say, of one kind, which has caused this disbalance. So for any meaningful dialogue to happen, I think we will have to fall back on the primary sanctity and the primary urge to trust what is being said. From there on only can you go on to the stage where something can be verified or discounted. Otherwise, a dialogic relationship will break down. I mean that's my understanding. And if you think differently, I would be more than happy to know. But the cultural practices of today, the technologically mediated lives that we are leading, it has greatly enabled the I would say corrosion of the sanctity which we associate to personal experience. Now, a lot of what I am saying is amalgamation of all kinds of things at once. But I'm saying that for the reason that there is one thing uniform which affects all of us in all walks of life, and that is this shift in certain assumptions from taking things as settled knowledge to a revisionist stand that everything should be up for questioning, which has come with greater access to information, which has come with greater access to knowledge, and which has come with greater access to means of verifying that knowledge. You understand? So I think I'll stop here, and if there are any questions, I'll be very happy to respond to them in whatever way I can. And this is a continuous exercise. It's a continuing exercise for me as well. And as I said, very much like previous sessions, I generally try to just think aloud here in the company of this group. So, and it has been very enriching so far the past 3 years, and I've gone back and found more about it about the questions that have emerged out of these discussions. So I'll be very happy to be darted with those questions, disagreements, so that I can take it back with me. And if there's something else which I can email you about, if there's a question which is not addressed here immediately, I'll of course be, reaching out to you in response to them. But please do share your reflections, or maybe any related concern, or any related reflection or question that you may have based on what we have discussed so far.
Thank you, Dr. Iqbal. It was definitely gave us a lot, food for thought. One of the things that's coming to my mind is, perhaps, I don't know, why do people go back to trusting, people who have sort of people or entities who have let you down. So, for example, I'd say politicians. We are disappointed year after year in them, and then we go back and vote for them, for example, or let's say bad marriages. Politicians are also like this. I always feel the countries are constantly in bad marriages with with our with the people who are governing us in general. So why does that happen? That's one thing that's on my mind, and perhaps others can obviously join in and share their questions. Or if you'd like to address this first and then we go next. That is also up to you.
Okay, the two are of very different kinds of trusts. Trust that a citizen has in its government is a trust between unequal powers, and that is another element of trust, which often operates across hierarchies of power. Marital relationship or other such relationships, of course, they are more of an interpersonal relationship, and they can still be a relationship across unequal powers, very much so. However, it is, to my understanding, when it comes to the citizens and governments, the trust that we place on them is precisely an expression of ourself. So it is not to be considered as some sort of some sort of a helplessness which makes you go back to the government. It is an expression of interest. It is an expression of your own agency, your own investment in that government. So it's an investment. It is an expression of your exercise. So that's what makes trust an agential exercise as well. Which has a very active, conscious, individual element built into it.
Thank you. That makes sense. Please go ahead and ask your questions. Munir, was your question answered, the previous one? Or do you have any follow-up questions?
Yeah, I have some suggestions, not suggestions, it will be my take on trust thing, or maybe containing some questions too. So first of all, doesn't this trust thing make us more of a vulnerable being, where we are prone to be cheated in n number of ways? First. Second, instead of being able to trust or going for trusting or wanting to be trusted, shouldn't we opt for good knowledge, good analysis, good deduction, so that we are not at behest of other persons' wishes and vested interests. Also, psychologically speaking, isn't this trust a name we give to a kind of a strategy, a policy, an alibi that whenever we fail in any relationship or any task, and we suppose that now give me a second chance and just trust me, I will do great now. So, first thing, and aren't all problems we face right now at mundane level, personal relations, at governmental levels, wars going on, aren't this because of this extension of the word trust or mistrust or distrust? So it seems that trust is becoming more of a vice than a virtue. I suppose so. And also, isn't it the time that we move from hermeneutics of trust to hermeneutics of suspicion, leaving Gadamer aside and embracing Marx and Nietzsche for that purpose, so that we become more accountable in ourselves and we are not at behest of others? We take command, we become accountable, we become responsible, and make this world a better place to live. Let's appreciate and endorse love and compassion instead of trust. And this is a reciprocal thing and symmetrical thing between self and the other, and it makes it a very mundane virtue, if not a vice, to me. I think that will be my thing on it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I do partially agree with you, but what you have offered, that we look for love, kindness, compassion, and abandon trust, I don't see how they are substantially, structurally, even conceptually different from the principles upon which trust operates. Your point on hermeneutics of suspicion is well taken, and I don't very clearly see how, if we pursue the line of Nietzsche or later even existential humanists, where you create your own self, an authentic self, very actively so, I don't see how it contradicts trust. I mean, I don't substantially see. Of course, it is, trust might make it look, I mean, characteristically speaking or descriptively speaking, trust might appear as something which is more outward looking than what an authentic self could look like. Nonetheless, I would still suggest, I mean, I would still insist that our proclamation to a collective life is difficult outside. It's difficult to imagine for me outside of trust. But at the same time, I must add, at no point, during this deliberation, did I or am I of the opinion that trust is supposed to weaken us or is supposed to take us away from our ability to reason, deduce, analyze. On the other hand, I would say it only emboldens your trust. Your ability to analyze, to justify your choices, in fact, makes you a trustworthy person, and it adds to your trustworthiness. That's all I have to say. Thank you, though.
Thank you, Neer. Anybody who would like to go next? Tulika?
Hello, sir. So, sis, you yourself said in the session that historically we as humans were doing great when it comes to trust, if I'm not wrong. Am I audible?
Could you come again? Yeah, you are.
I mean, historically, we we're doing better when we talk about trust. Do you believe so? I mean, I think you said something like that while the session was ongoing. So when we look at where we are, like in the present moment, I find very few people around who sort of confronts or who agrees that they trust somebody or maybe something or someone, whatever. So do you think we as human beings have failed when it comes to, maybe if this is as important virtue as you define it to be, do you think we have failed as people, that we are just not ready to be like when it was about trust? I mean, when I read about the topic, this is going to be about trust. So I don't know. I'm just, in all my classes, I just keep saying that I'm way too skeptical about this. Being skeptical and trusting on something is like way two different things. They are like entirely contradictories. So, and also you also mentioned that when we trust something or somebody, we somehow look for accountability. People are not ready to give up accountability, and I'm not just saying this on the perspective of personal experiences. Even professionally, people are just not, and nobody really cares. So, and there's this one very simple question. If you have read so much about trust, sir, so how many people are we supposed to trust in one lifetime?
No one. I'm not saying that you necessarily go on to trust everyone post this session. I think maybe I failed on that front, and I should have probably said it a little more clearly. I'm not vouching for trust only as a personal virtue, right? I mean, my thrust was more on how it is only trust which sustains our knowledge of the world. All right. And when I say knowledge of the world, our knowledge of the world is made possible only in a very finite, limited sense by our own efforts to verify things. Rest of it is fairly built on what your immediate next is saying to you, whether it's your parents to begin with, or your teachers, or if it comes to your health, your doctor, your public commentator, your leader, your religious leader. You just trust them, right? You come to trust them. You may also not trust them, but it is not to do with whether you should trust your friend or not. I'm not here to establish certain protocols to, assess your relationships against. All I'm saying is that as a member of a larger collective, that is what has enabled self-knowledge for all of us. And if at all we have to redeem ourselves from the current crisis, where the crisis is just about legitimacy, authority of knowledge, experience, then we will have to go back and rescue this. That's the limited point I'm trying to make. And I was also trying to highlight by talking about how, anecdotally speaking, of course, you may have come across these instances in different forms. For example, with that phrase, trust me, bro. If you think a little bit, deliberate over it, you'll find that it is less of a disagreement and more of a discomfiture with the sanctity that we place on first person account, even as we do want to trust what the person is saying. So I think this phrase kind of represents that tension, that crisis which we have come to witness, and of course maybe greatly engineered by all kinds of technology that the world has come to adopt. Nonetheless, I think a danger that I see emerging out of this is there are a lot of experiential accounts which are very, very, very significant, very important. For example, for the longest time, we didn't have an autobiography written by a Black American, an Afro-American, or Dalits in India, or similar disadvantaged group, severely persecuted group. And if the first person account's legitimacy is gone, then it also raises a lot of question that, it also takes us back to square one, because all of these articulations have come following a very long tradition of struggle, a very long, I would say, quest for dignity. And for it to slide so quickly is a great danger that I perceive. I'm not offering a solution with this, but I'm just perceiving a danger here. That's all. Yeah. And I think we will have to champion trust. I'm firm opinion that with all distrust and mistrust, it is only through trust that you see. We don't know each other here, whatever 15 odd people we are here, but I have come here hoping that you will listen to me and I will listen to you, and that in itself will probably take us somewhere to whatever degree, or even in disagreements, it will at least reinforce our opinions that, okay, I was right in thinking the way I was before this session, and I'll continue to think like that after this session, So I think that is a moment of trust enabling this conversation, and that's how it should be, I believe. That's the only way out to my mind.
Thank you. Poonam,
Thank you once again. Yeah.
Poonam, yes. Poonam, you had your hand raised.
Thank you so much, sir. Actually, I'm learning a lot about what you just explained right now. And what do you think? Like, is it where we failed as a collective? Is it at individual level? Like, at one point, I see that social media and all gave the platform people to share their story, and also it requires a lot of inner trust. Like, my story is worthy enough to be shared in the world. So that thing is also there. And where we fail, like as an individual uh, to I was just wondering that where we failed as an individual, like for collective trust, because at one point social media and everything gave platform people to share their story also, and also is it like, I feel that there is like platform for people to share their story, and like also like that confident that my story is worthy enough to be shared in the world. But also I'm wondering that where as we fail to trust.
I think she wants to ask that where did we sort of fail? Did we fail in terms of like not having trust? Did we fail at an individual level? Did social media was responsible? Or what was the reasons that the trust deficit has come? I may be wrong, but Poonam, if you can hear it, you can clarify in case I'm wrong, or if there's anybody else who kind of understood it better.
Where did we fail is what Poonam is asking, huh? Well, I don't know if there's a precise point at which we failed, but I'm only observing something that is currently unfolding, and I think at the bottom of all this is a crisis in trust. So it's not as if people are not telling their stories, their mundane stories earlier. It's not as if people are not questioning authorities earlier. It is not as if people are not questioning certain histories over other histories, etc. But what has happened with great, I would say, frequency, and at a much wider level, is the tendency to very quickly come to discount and not accord the sanctity that it deserves. I'm talking about the narration of experiences, etc. And that has happened even as there's a crisis of legitimacy looming over the protocols of professional knowledge systems. So they have, in a sense, come together where our communication is always trying to straddle, the urge to trust, and at the same time also not trust. At the same time also ask for accountability. So that, I think, is the tension which is of greater concern. And my worry as in my concern here is precisely that this will end up questioning even the most immediate experiences that have found place in public culture, in public memory, with following great, I would say, a great period, a very long period of great struggle. So this cynicism can, in fact, very quickly come down to, in fact, negate that as a source of knowledge as well. So I think we will have to once again go back to consider trust as a primary virtue as human beings, and particularly as those who find value, place value in listening to others, and continue this dialogue, irrespective. That's all I have to say in this regard.
Thank you.
Okay.
Zikra, you had your hand raised.
Hello, sir. So my question is, can you brief me the role of trust in addressing the current global issues such as climate change, public health emergencies, and economic instability?
That's too much to ask for, isn't it? The thing is, well, of course, as those who take interest in public dialogue, right now we are in a public dialogue, right? All I can say is the role that trust can play is in creating solidarities, horizontal networks. And those solidarity networks across different forms of experiences, across different communities of experience, across different histories, all of them can only, all of that can only happen if we come to place the very, if we come to identify that how it is only through trust, somewhere down the line, that knowledge about something, about others, about a different, about someone's experience, it is only rooted in this urge to trust and its status as a primary virtue. Of course, there are moments every day, every hour, every minute of the day where this is also exploited, where this is also resulting in misinformation, distrust, and also in resulting in a great degree of acrimony. But it's like, it's like, let me give you a different example. It's like lying. When you lie and when you speak truth, they both are functions of language. You can use language to lie, and you also use language to speak truth, right? And the lie operates in the same form of language through which you represent truth. So a lie circulates successfully only insofar as that it is circulating as truth, right? So it is the form in the form of language that a lie exploits in order to find legitimacy. Now, this is what is happening in the case of trust, I would say. That this distrust, this misinformation, this, this lack of willingness to afford the same, dignity, to afford the same respect, and to kind of be welcoming of what someone is offering, is also the exploitation of the form in which a trust operates. Like, you use that form, but to a different end. So I think the only way out to redeem it from a current crisis is, in fact, to enrich its, to kind of make this virtue of our life as a primary virtue. That's all I think I can say at this point. And maybe, whether it's public health emergency or global climate crisis, at the end of the day, these crises are affecting us, right? And if somebody is expressing concerns around this, we don't have to be Trump to say something absolutely foolish with regards to climate crisis. Instead, we have to accept that. We have to trust that the climate crisis that a group of people experience, which can also result in public health emergency. So solidarities across networks, across experiences, across histories, this is what trust can enable, to my mind.
Okay.
All right. So I think we can stop here.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Iqbal, for.
Thank you, everyone, once again. Yes. Yes. Thank you again.
Really
yes.
grateful to have you with us. Thank you.